I caught my best friend wearing a fake baby bump and using my ultrasound photos at her baby shower. So I found out I was pregnant about 5 months ago. I was in the bathroom staring at this plastic stick with 2 pink lines, and my heart was just hammering against my ribs. It wasn't planned. My husband Mark and I had talked about starting a family eventually, but we were thinking maybe next year or the year after. We'd only been married for 8 months. But surprise, 2 pink lines on the test. I literally just sat down on the toilet lid clutching the test, feeling like the bathroom was closing in on me. Mark was at work. He's a nurse and was covering a weekend shift, so I was processing this bombshell alone. After the initial shock wore off, though, I started feeling this weird mix of terror and excitement. The first person I decided to tell was my best friend Jenna. We've been best friends since 3rd grade when her family moved in next door, so basically 20 years of friendship. She's always been obsessed with having kids, like, since we were kids ourselves. While other girls moved on from playing with baby dolls, Jenna never did. She used to name all her dolls, create elaborate backstories for them, and keep feeding schedules in a little notebook. By high school, she had a list of baby names picked out. In college, she'd literally choose apartments based on which ones would make better nurseries someday. It was her whole thing. Unfortunately, she broke up with her boyfriend Colin 3 months before I found out I was pregnant. They were together for 4 years, and he ended things because he decided he didn't want children, which was obviously devastating for her. She was still really raw about it, so I was nervous about telling her my news, but she's my best friend. I wanted her to be the first to know, even before my parents or Mark's family. We met at our favorite coffee shop, and I gently told her I was pregnant. Her reaction was weird. She just kind of froze for a second, then put on this obviously fake smile and said, "Congratulations," in this flat voice. Then she started making these passive-aggressive comments like, well, at least one of us gets to live the dream. She barely stayed for 10 minutes before making up some excuse about helping her mom with something and practically ran out of there. I was hurt, but tried to be understanding. I figured she just needed some time to process, given her recent breakup and her lifelong baby fever. We've been friends for 2 decades. We've weathered plenty of storms before. I told Mark we were pregnant that evening. I'd planned to do something cute, buy baby shoes or a daddy mug, but after the strange encounter with Jenna, I just blurted it out while we were making dinner. He dropped the wooden spoon he was using to stir pasta sauce, splattering red all over the stovetop, then just stared at me for what felt like forever. Then this slow smile spread across his face, and he lifted me off my feet in a tight hug. He was shocked, but excited, asking all these questions about how I was feeling and when we should tell our families. After Mark went to sleep, I texted Jenna, told Mark about the baby, he's excited, hope everything's okay with you, let me know when you're free to talk more. Her response didn't come until morning, and when it did, it was brief. That's great, happy for you both, crazy busy this week with work, talk soon. But then she just disappeared from my life. She stopped responding to texts, canceled our plans, and was just generally MIA. I'd get these brief, impersonal replies days later, but that was it. Our weekly coffee dates were canceled last minute or never scheduled at all. I tried to be understanding, but I couldn't help feeling abandoned at a time when I needed my best friend most. Fast forward to when I was about 16 weeks along. My jeans no longer buttoned, and a small but definite bump had formed. The first trimester nausea had finally subsided, and I was starting to enjoy being pregnant. Mark had taken to talking to my belly each night, telling terrible dad jokes to our unborn child, making me laugh until tears streamed down my face. A few days later, I was browsing maternity clothes at the mall when I ran into Liz, a mutual friend from college, who'd stayed in touch with both of us over the years. She saw my bump and was all excited, asking how far along I was. I told her 16 weeks and that I was finally feeling human after months of nausea. Then she hit me with, "That's about where Jenna is too, right? You guys must be having so much fun being pregnant together." What? I must have looked completely shocked because Liz's smile immediately dropped. She asked if Jenna and I were due around the same time, mentioning she'd seen her at prenatal yoga the previous week talking about a September due date. I tried to keep my voice casual when I asked, "Jenna told you she's pregnant?" But inside I was freaking out. Liz got this deer in headlights look and started backpedaling, saying she thought I knew since we're best friends. I played it off like, "Oh yeah, she's just keeping it quiet still," while my brain was exploding. Poor Liz looked mortified and begged me not to tell Jenna she'd mentioned anything. I assured her it was fine and made some excuse to leave, but my mind was racing a million miles an hour. I abandoned my shopping and headed straight to my car, where I immediately pulled up Jenna's Instagram. We followed each other, of course, but I realized I hadn't really looked at her posts in weeks, too hurt by her distance to subject myself to photos of her seemingly happy life without me. Her most recent post was from 3 days ago, a picture of a sunset with the caption, "New journeys, new beginnings. So grateful for this next chapter. #blessed, #new life." I scrolled back further. 2 weeks ago, a close-up photo of a mug of tea and a book about motherhood, barely visible at the edge of the frame. Caption, "Self-care Sunday, learning and growing, #preparation." A month ago, Jenna in loose-fitting clothes at a park. Caption, "Change is coming, embracing every moment, #transformation." Cold dread pooled in my stomach. These weren't explicit claims of pregnancy, but combined with what Liz had said, I was starting to believe the unthinkable. I checked her friends list and noticed several new names I didn't recognize. Clicking on one profile, I found myself looking at a clearly pregnant woman named Amber, whose own recent post showed her and Jenna at what appeared to be a prenatal class, both in yoga attire, Jenna wearing a loose top that could potentially hide a small small bump. The caption read, "So glad I met this mama-to-be at yoga. Due date buddies make the journey so much more fun. #SeptemberBabies." I must have sat in my car for 20 minutes, scrolling through more evidence, each post and comment building a picture I couldn't quite accept. There was no way Jenna was actually pregnant. She wasn't even dating anyone since Colin. Was she pretending? But why would she do that? I thought back to that day at the coffee shop, her strange reaction to my news, the way she'd practically fled, the weeks of silence that followed. A horrible suspicion began to form, but I pushed it away. This was Jenna, my best friend since childhood. There had to be some explanation. Maybe she had started dating someone new and hadn't told me. Maybe she'd been undergoing fertility treatments on her own. Maybe she'd had a one-night stand she was embarrassed about. Whatever the explanation, I needed to hear it from her directly. Before I could overthink it, I texted her, "Hey, I'm in your neighborhood and thought I'd stop by. You home?" I wasn't actually near her place, but I didn't want to give her the chance to make up an excuse. To my surprise, she responded almost immediately. "Sure, come on over." 30 minutes later, I was standing outside her apartment door, heart pounding. When she opened the door, I nearly gasped. She was wearing a flowy dress with what looked like a small baby bump underneath it. Her apartment looked completely different. The modern art was replaced with pastel baby-themed paintings. There were pregnancy books on her coffee table and prenatal vitamins on her counter. I asked her what was going on, and she acted all casual, like nothing was weird. When I mentioned that Liz told me she was pregnant, she just said, "Oh yeah," like it was no big deal. I asked why she hadn't told me, and she said it was complicated. When I pressed about who the father was, she gave this vague answer about a new relationship that was moving pretty fast. I asked her directly how far along she was, and she said, 17 weeks, due September 12th without hesitation. That's almost exactly a week before my due date. When I asked about the baby, she said, "Baby girl is developing right on schedule." I found that strange, but not identical, as I'm having a boy, according to our genetic testing. She started talking about how we could be pregnancy buddies now and go shopping for baby stuff together, but something felt so off about her enthusiasm. I made an excuse about meeting Mark for dinner and got out of there as fast as I could. Once in my car, I called Mark. "I need you to come home right now," I told him, my voice shaking. "Something really weird is happening with Jenna." When we both arrived home, I told my husband everything. He looked at me like I was crazy when I suggested she might be faking a pregnancy. He said that was a pretty serious accusation. I was pacing around our living room trying to make him understand. I told him her apartment was totally transformed into some nursery waiting room hybrid. She had the bump, was doing prenatal yoga, taking vitamins, the whole 9 yards. But she was super vague about the father, just calling it a new relationship. Mark tried to rationalize it, suggesting maybe she was embarrassed about how it happened, like maybe it was a one-night stand or sperm donor. He said just because she wasn't sharing details didn't mean she was lying. I pointed out the timing. She claimed to be due just 1 week before me. What are the odds? He just sighed and said pregnancies happen all the time, and with how badly she's always wanted a baby, maybe she was already trying when I shared my news. I decided to reach out to her sister Jessica. We're not BFFs or anything, but we're friendly enough that texting her wouldn't seem completely random. Kept it casual and just asked how her family was doing. She responded super fast, saying her parents were good and traveling a lot, and that Jenna was busy with work but fine. She asked how Mark and I were doing. I was staring at this message like, seriously? No mention of Jenna being pregnant? That seems like pretty major family news that would come up even in a quick update. So I told her about my pregnancy and my September due date. She gave me this super excited congratulations, but still didn't mention anything about Jenna expecting to. At this point, I figured I should just ask. So I mentioned stopping by Jenna's place and that she seemed different. Jessica asked what I meant by different and said she'd just texted with Jenna yesterday about their mom's birthday gift. I finally just came out with it and told her Jenna said she was pregnant too, due a week before me. There was this long pause before Jessica replied saying that wasn't possible, that Jenna would have told her, and asking if I was sure that's what Jenna said. I confirmed that yes, Jenna had a bump and everything, and claimed to be 17 weeks along with a girl. Another long pause before Jessica said she had literally just talked to Jenna for an hour yesterday about family stuff, and Jenna hadn't mentioned being pregnant at all. She was like, there's no way she wouldn't tell me something like that. I weakly suggested maybe Jenna was waiting to tell family until she was further along, but Jessica wasn't buying it. She pointed out Jenna was supposedly 17 weeks already, and said something wasn't right. She said she'd called Jenna directly. I was pacing around my apartment for about 10 minutes before Jessica texted back saying she'd talked to Jenna, who denied the whole thing, claimed I must have misunderstood and that she never said she was pregnant. When I insisted I saw her with a bump, Jessica said Jenna told her I was confused because of my own pregnancy, and then asked if I was okay. I couldn't believe it. Jenna was gaslighting her own sister and trying to make me sound crazy. I just told Jessica I was fine and suggested we drop it for now. The next morning, I woke up to this text from Jenna accusing me of spreading rumors about her to her family and saying I should ask her directly if I had questions about her pregnancy. She had the nerve to say she thought we were better friends than that. I didn't even respond. What could I possibly say? She was clearly maintaining different versions of reality for different people in her life. That night, I went down a social media rabbit hole, looking up the women Jenna had apparently befriended in her prenatal yoga class. There were half a dozen of them, all due in September or October, all posting photos with Jenna, all referring to her as a fellow mom-to-be. What the hell was going on? Was my best friend really pretending to be pregnant to a group of strangers? And if so, how far was she planning to take this charade? I had a moral dilemma. Should I confront Jenna directly? Should I tell tell these women they were being deceived? Should I try harder to convince her family she needed help? My anxiety was through the roof, and I was worried about how the stress might affect my baby. After a week of losing sleep over this whole situation, I decided I needed to gather more information. Looking through her social media, I found out which pregnancy support group at the local community center Jenna had been attending, so I signed up. I just wanted to see firsthand what she was telling these people. At my first meeting, Jenna wasn't there, thank God, but her name came up in conversation almost immediately. This woman named Amber, the same one from that Instagram photo with Jenna, asked if I was friends with Jenna because she mentioned another friend was due around the same time. I just cautiously said we'd known each other since childhood. Amber gushed about how Jenna was such a sweetheart and so excited about her little girl and how she was going to be a wonderful mom. I felt sick hearing all this. Trying to sound casual, I asked if Jenna had mentioned anything about the baby's father. Amber's smile dropped a little and she said only that he's not in the picture and that it seemed like a painful subject. She added that they'd all been giving Jenna extra support because of this. So not only was Jenna faking a pregnancy, she'd created this whole backstory about being abandoned by the father to get sympathy. I couldn't believe it. The Jenna I knew would never do something like this. After the meeting, several other women shared stories about Jenna, how she'd already picked out her daughter's name, Olivia, which was my choice if I'd been having a girl, how she'd been redesigning her spare bedroom as a nursery, and how she was planning a natural birth with a doula. Later that day, I went to visit Jenna's parents and tried talking to them, thinking they'd want to know their daughter was having some kind of mental health crisis, but they basically accused me of being hormonal and confused. Mrs. Hayes actually started crying, asking why I would spread horrible rumors about her daughter. Mr. Hayes told me to leave their house and stop telling stories about Jenna. That evening, I got a text from Jenna. My parents just called, very upset. I don't know what game you're playing, Mia, but it needs to stop. If you can't be happy for me, then maybe we shouldn't be in each other's lives right now. I honestly had no idea what to do at this point. Her family was convinced I was the crazy one, and all her new friends had zero reason to doubt her. Meanwhile, I knew 100% she wasn't actually pregnant. It felt like I was trapped in some weird Black Mirror episode. Then the next day, this glossy pink invitation shows up in my mailbox for, get this, Jenna's baby shower. Her new friends from the pregnancy support group were throwing it in 2 weeks. The invitation was all fancy with this elegant script. To celebrate baby girl Hayes, join us in showering mommy-to-be Jenna with love and support. When I showed it to my husband, he just whistled and said, she's really committing to this, isn't she? I was completely torn. Do I actually go along with this insanity? Skip it and let her keep up this bizarre charade with her new friends? Crash it and expose her? Update. I went to my fake pregnant friend's baby shower, and it was even worse than I expected. First, thank you to everyone who commented on my last post. I read all your advice and decided to go to the shower, without a gift of course, but I went mainly to see how far Jenna was taking this and hopefully get through to her afterward. The shower was yesterday and it was surreal. Amber, one of Jenna's new pregnant friends, hosted it, and her house was decorated in full pink explosion mode. Pink balloons, streamers, flowers everywhere. There was even a banner that said, welcome baby Olivia. Jenna was wearing this form-fitting pink dress with what looked like a totally convincing 5-month pregnancy bump. If I didn't know better, I would have 100% believed she was pregnant. When she hugged me, I felt something firm against my actual bump. Definitely not just pillows or padding. This was like a structured prosthetic. Then introduced me to everyone as her oldest friend and made this big announcement about how amazing it was that we were having babies just a week apart. All these women were cooing and awing, and I just nodded along, feeling like I'm living in some alternate reality. We did all the typical baby shower games, measuring belly circumference with string. Mine was actually bigger despite supposedly being a week behind her. Baby bingo, pregnancy trivia, etc. The whole time, Jenna was playing the role of excited mom-to-be perfectly, talking about her fake symptoms, cravings, and doctor visits like they were real. During the gift opening, I noticed something weird. She kept all the gifts on her lap where they partially blocked my view, but from my angle I could see she was checking each gift receipt before reacting. She'd see that something could be returned and then exclaim, oh, this is perfect. Super sketchy. But the moment that made my blood run cold was when she started showing ultrasound photos. Here's my little girl at 20 weeks, she said, passing around this black and white image. When it got to me, I almost had a panic attack. It was my ultrasound from my 20-week appointment 3 days ago. She'd somehow gotten a hold of it, cropped out my info, and was passing it off as hers. I had to excuse myself to the bathroom. I was literally shaking with anger and shock. Then Jenna followed me in and asked if I was enjoying the party in this creepy, cheerful voice. I confronted her about the ultrasound, telling her I knew it was mine from Women's Health Partners. She straight up denied it and said I was being paranoid and that pregnancy hormones can do that. Then, as she was fixing her hair, I spotted the edge of a silicone prosthetic peeking out from under her dress near her rib cage. I pointed at it and asked directly why she was pretending to be pregnant. She denied it at first, but when I kept pressing about the fake bump, stolen ultrasound, and how Jessica said she denied everything, she got super defensive. For a second, I thought she might break down, but then she flipped to attack mode. She actually accused me of being jealous of her, said I knew how much she wanted to be a mother and then I accidentally got pregnant and it wasn't fair. When I expressed concern for her mental health, she got even angrier, saying I was trying to ruin the happiest day of her life. When I said there was no baby and she was lying, she got really nervous people would hear. When I said good, good, they should know the truth, she grabbed my wrist really hard and threatened that if I said anything to anyone at the party, our friendship would be over forever. Right then, Amber knocked on the door about some diaper raffle, and Jenna instantly switched to her cheery voice and said we'd be right out, then turned back to me with this ice-cold look and said, "Not a word, Mia." She left me standing there, stunned and heartbroken. I rejoined the party, and towards the end, Jenna gave this whole emotional speech while staring right at me, basically daring me to contradict her. She talked about how blessed she and Olivia were, and how in September when she holds her little girl for the first time, it will all be worth it. Everyone applauded while I just clapped automatically, feeling like I might throw up. I left as soon as I could, making excuses about pregnancy fatigue. Once I was safely in my car, I texted her that we needed to talk privately, not at the shower. She immediately replied, "My place, 2 p.m. To you." When I showed up the next day, she answered the door in normal clothes. No bump, no maternal glow, just regular Jenna in jeans and a t-shirt. The transformation was so jarring. Her apartment still had all the baby stuff, but it felt like walking onto an abandoned movie set. I straight up asked her why she was doing this. She wouldn't even look at me and just mumbled that I wouldn't understand. When I said it seemed like she'd lost her mind, she got all defensive and was like, real supportive, sarcastically. I couldn't believe she expected support for faking a pregnancy and stealing my ultrasound. When I called her out, she claimed she didn't steal my pictures but found similar ones online and edited them. Like that makes it better? Then she just exploded, asking if I thought she'd planned all this. She admitted when I told her I was pregnant, she was angry and hurt. I asked why my pregnancy would hurt her, and she yelled that it was supposed to be her because she'd wanted it her whole life, and I just stumbled into it without even trying. Apparently after Colin left, she felt like her entire future was erased, and when I announced my perfect accidental pregnancy with my perfect husband, something in her just broke. She said it started with one lie to a coworker who wouldn't shut up about her sister's baby. It felt good getting the attention, so she kept going. Bought a fake bump online, joined classes, made new pregnant friends. She said it felt like she was living the life she was supposed to have. When I asked what her plan was when the due date arrived, she admitted she might just say she lost the baby. I was horrified that she'd consider faking a stillbirth to women who are actually pregnant and terrified of that exact thing. She just said she didn't know what else to do because she couldn't tell them the truth. I told her she needed therapy, and she got super bitter, saying it was easy for me because I have everything: the husband, the real baby, the perfect life. I tried explaining my life wasn't perfect and I didn't get pregnant to hurt her. She claimed to know that, but clearly didn't believe it. When I gently suggested she needed professional help, she completely flipped out. She stood up suddenly and was like, "Don't pretend you care about me. You just don't want me to embarrass you." I told her I was genuinely worried, and she mocked me as Saint Mia, always so concerned, so perfect. She said she didn't need my judgment or pity and was doing fine before I stuck my nose in. I was like, "You call living in a fantasy world and lying to everyone fine?" Then she just demanded I get out of her apartment. When I refused to leave until we figured this out, she got in my face and accused me of being jealous that, for once, people were paying attention to me instead of you. She insisted her lie wasn't hurting anyone. I pointed out it was hurting her, plus all those women at the shower who genuinely cared about her, and her family who would be devastated when they found out. She coldly said, "They don't need to find out, unless you tell them." When I tried saying this had to stop, she interrupted with, "We're not friends anymore, and that friends support each other, not destroy each other's happiness." I told her, happiness built on lies isn't real happiness. Then something really scary happened. She suddenly lunged at my real baby bump. I stumbled backward in shock. She was screaming that I thought I was so special because I was actually pregnant, and that it's just biology, any idiot can get pregnant. When I told her she was scaring me, she said, "Good, maybe now you know how I feel. Scared, alone, watching my dreams slip away while you get everything handed to you." I backed toward the door and said I was leaving, but this wasn't over. I talked to her parents, sister, anyone who could make her see reason. She just smiled eerily and said, "Who do you think they'll believe? The hormonal pregnant woman making wild accusations, or me?" I just said goodbye and that I hoped she'd get help before things got worse. As I walked away, she yelled, "Don't come back, we're done." I made it to my car before completely breaking down. I'd just lost my best friend of 20 years, and I wasn't even sure if anyone would believe me over her. She'd been so convincing at the shower. If it came down to her word against mine, I wasn't confident the truth would win. When I told Mark everything, he held me while I cried and said she definitely needed help, but I couldn't force her to get it. He reminded me that the stress wasn't good for me or the baby. I knew he was right, but it felt awful. I kept wondering what would happen in September when all those expectant mothers from the support group gave birth, while Jenna's fictional baby never materialized. A week after our confrontation, I checked her Instagram and found I'd been blocked. Same on Facebook, Twitter, even her phone number now went straight to voicemail. She'd cut me out completely. Through mutual friends, I heard snippets about her in the following months. She'd apparently told people I'd become unstable during my pregnancy and had been spreading lies about her out of jealousy. She was still attending the prenatal classes, still maintaining the fiction of her pregnancy. Some mutual friends even began to distance themselves from me, clearly believing Jenna's version of events. It was like watching my social circle fracture in real time. I tried explaining the truth to a couple of close friends, but even they seemed skeptical. Are you sure you didn't misunderstand? They'd ask. Or, pregnancy can make you more emotional, you know. I felt completely isolated, watching this bizarre situation unfold while being powerless to stop it. The stress was affecting my sleep, my appetite, and I was worried about the baby. Mark suggested we focus on preparing for our son's arrival and try to put the Jenna situation on the back burner for now. Let's concentrate on what we can control, he said, massaging my shoulders as I sobbed one night. Our baby needs you healthy and as stress-free as possible. He was right. I had to prioritize my own health and my baby's well-being, so I threw myself into getting the nursery ready, attending my own prenatal classes, and trying to enjoy the final months of my pregnancy, despite the dark cloud hanging over me. As my due date approached, I found myself wondering more and more about what Jenna was planning. Her fake due date was only a week before mine. What was she going to do when that day came and went with no baby? Would she fake a stillbirth, as she'd hinted? The thought made me sick. I decided to reach out to Jessica again, just to check in. Hey Jess, I know things got weird last time we talked, but I'm worried about your sister. Has she told you anything about being pregnant yet? Jessica's response was cold. Jenna told me what you've been saying about her. I think you need help, Mia. Please leave our family alone. So Jenna had gotten to her sister too. I was completely cut off from any way to help my friend. All I could do was wait and see what happened next. Final update. My best friend who faked a pregnancy showed up at the hospital after I gave birth. I honestly didn't think I'd be posting another update, but here we go. My son Noah was born 3 days ago after 36 hours of labor. Not fun, but totally worth it. We were getting ready to be discharged from the hospital today when a nurse said I had another visitor. It was Jenna. I hadn't heard anything from her in weeks. After our big fight, I decided to keep my distance for my own mental health. Her fake due date came and went with no announcement on social media, so I assumed she'd told everyone she lost the baby. Mark gave us some privacy, and I was honestly speechless when she walked in. She looked really different, thinner, sadder, but somehow more present. That weird manic energy from our last encounter was completely gone. She asked if it was okay to come in, and I just nodded because I was so surprised. She stood by the bed looking at Noah sleeping in my arms and softly said he was beautiful. The first thing she told me was that she's been seeing a therapist. When I asked what happened with her pregnancy, she confirmed what I suspected. She told everyone she lost the baby at 8 months. She said the support has been overwhelming. People bringing meals, sending cards, checking on her, all for a baby that never existed. The creepiest part was when she admitted she started to believe her own lie at some point, that there really was a baby she lost. When I asked if she told anyone the truth, she said just her therapist and now me. She asked if she could hold Noah, and after hesitating for a second, I let her. While holding him, she told me something that came up in therapy. She can't have children. She found out right before Colin broke up with her, and that's the real reason he left. He didn't want to deal with the hassle of adoption or surrogacy. She said she couldn't tell me because saying it out loud made it real. When I told her I was pregnant, something in her snapped because it seemed so unfair that I wasn't even trying while she would have given anything to be pregnant. I told her I wished I'd known so I could have been more sensitive. She insisted none of this was my fault and that she'd made terrible choices that hurt a lot of people, especially me. She said she didn't expect forgiveness but wanted me to know she was getting help. Looking at this broken person who'd been part of my life for 20 years, I realized that despite everything, I still cared about her. I told her honestly that rebuilding trust would take a lot of time, but I didn't want to lose her from my life completely, and that Noah would need his Aunt Jenna. She teared up at that and said maybe someday when she's healthier, she could babysit, if I'd trust her. I said we'd take it one step at a time. Before she left, she mentioned she's looking into adoption someday, after working on herself first. Her therapist thinks it might be healing to channel her maternal feelings in a healthier direction. It's been 2 months now since Noah was born, and I wanted to share an update on how things are going. Jenna's still in therapy twice a week and has started volunteering at a children's hospital in the NICU, rocking babies whose parents can't be there all the time. She says it helps her process her grief while letting her nurture babies in a healthy way. She slowly started telling people the truth, beginning with her sister and parents. They were shocked and hurt at first, but they've been supportive of her getting help. She hasn't told all the women from the support group yet. Her therapist is helping her figure out how to do that without causing more harm. Yesterday, she came over for dinner and brought a book about adoption she's been researching. It was our first meal together in almost 9 months. Things were awkward at first, but it felt good having my friend back in my life. When she held Noah and sang softly to him while he stared up at her, I saw glimpses of the friend I've known most of my life. Our relationship is different now, more complicated, more fragile, but also more honest than it's been in a long time. I'm not saying everything is fixed. What she did was deeply disturbing, and there are still moments when I look at her and wonder how she could have maintained such an elaborate deception for so long. The trust between us is fragile and will take time to fully rebuild, but I'm hopeful that Jenna will continue healing and perhaps eventually find motherhood in whatever form works for her. I'm hopeful our friendship can survive even this strangest of betrayals, and I'm hopeful Noah will grow up knowing the love of many, including his Aunt Jenna, who took a dark path but is finding her way back. As she was leaving last night, she said, "Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to." I just hugged her and said, "That's what real friends do."